2 of William Lilly's Introduction to Astrology. In this video, we are going to be reading Life of William Lilly. He was an astrologer from the 1600s. And I imagine that he, and also this republishing of his writing, had a considerable impact on modern tropical astrology, or on modern Western astrology as we know it today. I'm going section by section, chapter by chapter. And it's gonna be fun, okay? I don't know how I feel about continuing to follow the text as I read, but we'll see. I probably won't be consistent with it, but I'll just do what comes naturally. That seems to be best. This little mini biography of William Lilly was written by Zadkiel. Yes, Zadkiel, in his 1852 republication and revitalization, shall we say, of the original text from 1652. Was that it? 1652. I'm always getting it wrong. No, 1647. 1647. Let's dive in. In offering an abstract of the most valuable of this clever astrologer's works to the notice of the public, I consider myself called upon to make some mention of his personal history, which will be very important because this book actually belongs to my partner who found it when we went to a Samhain or Beltane ceremony, and they have a little resale section full of people's books and other tools in their practice, and he is like a walking encyclopedia of historical events and people and just so many things. My cat might start going crazy. I'm not entirely certain I would show the camera, or I would show him on the camera, but it is so precariously perched the way that it is, so I'm not going to move it. It'll only get moved if he decides to be a menace and walk all over my desk. Yes. I hope he didn't poop. I hate when he poops. Diaz? Oh yes, what was I saying? So what I was saying was, it is very important to know these things, who the astrology worked for, who his alliances were, so that we know if they had any bias in what they were publishing at the time. Because my partner and I were looking at the descriptions of the signs as they may describe a person, and some of them were highly unfavorable, and it was so funny. Well, you'll probably get to hear it once I get to that part of the book, but oh god, it's so funny. So we assumed that if he was working for a very wealthy person of the time, he may have been more favorable to things that would pertain to that person. And it fortunately happens that this is not made up of imaginary ideas founded on a few known facts and a multiplicity of suppositions, for what we know of this man of extraordinary talent rests on the best evidence. He undertook in his 66th year to write a history of his own life to his, quote, worthy friend, Elias Ashmole, ESQ, which I think might be Esquire, I'm not sure. Afterwards, Sir Elias Ashmole, the founder of a celebrated museum which bears his name. Mr. Ashmole made marginal notes therein which testify his high opinion of our author, and fortunately for the cause of astrology, this gentleman verified the correctness of the figures of heaven which are given in the subsequent pages. For we find the following note at the foot of page 131. I devised the forms and fashions of the several schemes. E.A. This note was made after these observations of Lilly. Quote, the desire I had to benefit posterity and my country at last overcame all difficulties, so that what I could not do in 1 year, I perfected early in the next year, 1647. And then in that year, likewise, 1647, I finished the 3rd book of Nativities, during the composing whereof for 7 whole weeks I was shut up of the plague, burying in that time 2 maidservants thereof. God. Yet towards November that year, the introduction, called by the name of Christian Astrology, was made public. Public. Kind of like magic with a K. Public with a K. The fact of this work having been chiefly composed under such awful circumstances and with a dreadful death immediately before his eyes, with the pestilence ravaging his own household, might, with unprejudiced men, have been taken as a proof that the writer was sincere in what he wrote, and really believed in the truth of that which he taught to others, as truth under the solemn appeal to Almighty God, which is so beautifully worded in his introductory epistle. Modern critics, however, can see no force in his argument, but unhesitatingly condemn William Lilly as, quote, an accomplished impostor and a knavish fortune-teller. Such, reader, is the force of prejudice. It will not allow men to examine before they condemn. For it did, then would the literary world speedily acknowledge the reality of those doctrines which our author has so ably set forth in the following pages. William Lilly was born of an honest yeoman family in the town of Dysworth, 7 miles south of the town of Derby, on the 1st day of May, 1602. At 11 years old, he was sent to Ashby de la Zouch, is that how you say it, to be instructed by one Mr. John Brindley. Here, he says, he learned the following authors, such as, good God, Sententue, what is that? Pueriles, Cato, Cordurus, Aesop's Fables, Tully's Offices, Ovid de Tristibus, lastly Virgil, then Horace, and also Camden's Greek Grammar, Theognis, and Homer's Iliads, and entered Udall's Hebrew Grammar. In the 18th year of his age, his master, quote, was enforced from keeping school, being persecuted by the bishop's officers, and our author was, quote, enforced to leave school. He then kept school himself for 1/4 of a year. On Monday, April 3rd, 1620, he left Dysworth and came to London, where he was compelled to accept the humble situation of a footboy, his father being then, quote, I'm so sorry. I can't pronounce British words or towns or names. In Leicester, jail for debt. And of course, incapable of doing much for his son. He had only 7 shillings and 6 pence left when he arrived at London, having footed it all along with the carrier. In 1624, his mistress died, having given him £5 in old gold, after which he lived most comfortably, his master having a great affection for him. In 1626, his master married again, having first settled on our author £20 a year, which he enjoyed all through life. In October 1627, he was made free of the Salters Company, and on the 8th day of September 1627, married his master's widow. This same lady, and they, quote, lived very lovingly until her death in October of 1633. He married his boss's widow? My God. Scandalous. In the year 1632, began to study astrology, being instructed in the rudiments by one Evans, a Welshman of indifferent abilities. Lilly tells us that he applied himself to these interesting studies, quote, many times, 12 or 15 or 18 hours, day and night, adding, I was curious to discover whether there was any verity in the art or not. By this, his first wife, he acquired a fortune of very near to £1,000. So he was making £20 a year in 1627 money, or 1632 money. And so £20 a year, and he acquired, where was I? He acquired almost £1,000. That's nice. In the year 1634, he purchased the moiety of 13 houses in the Strand, for which he gave £530. The figure of the heavens erected on this occasion will be found in the following pages. November the 18th, 1634, he married again, and had £500 portion with that wife. Quote, she was of the nature of Mars, and he lived not very lovingly with her, as seems by his observations at her death. So that's not a compliment. She was a feisty woman. Hi. Hi. Hello. 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 The cat wants to play, but I am not going to play. I have to read. He appears to have now practiced horary astrology with success, and to have instructed numerous individuals in the art. Among others, he taught John Humphreys in the year 1640, for which service he received £40. He also wrote in the year 1639 a treatise on the eclipse of the sun, May 22nd, 1639, and appears about that period to have turned his attention much to mundane astrology. He says, I did carefully in 1642 and 1643 take notice of every grand action which happened betwixt king and parliament, and did first then incline to believe that, as all sublunary affairs did depend upon superior causes, so there was a possibility of discovering them by the configurations of the superior bodies. In which way, making some essays in those 2 years, I found encouragement to proceed further, which I did. I perused the writings of the ancients, but therein they were silent, or gave no satisfaction. At last I framed unto myself that method which then I and since I follow, which I hope in time may be more perfected by a more penetrating person than myself. Not again, not again. He appears to have dabbled a little in magic also, but he soon grew weary of such employment and burned his books. It's kind of like Doreen Virtue making a living off of making a fortune off of her angel books and then being like, actually, this is of the devil. I am a Christian now, and I rebuke all oracle readings. Lilly's better sense led him to perceive which of these studies was worthy of an honest and intelligent man's pursuit, and which not. Wow. About April 1644, he first published Merlinus Anglicus Jr. This work contained some of his most remarkable predictions and was continued for many years. It attracted much attention and was the means of adding greatly to the fame of our author as an astrologer. In that year, he printed the White King's Prophecy. Oh my god, my cat's going crazy. Of which were sold in 3 days, 1,800. Wow. And some other works of like nature, such as the Prophetical Merlin, etc. In 1645, he was twice had before a committee of the Parliament for some observations in his Starry Messenger, but he escaped, partly by means of his numerous friends and partly by his own ingenuity. His lock-picking skill was 100. In 1647, when he published the present work, he was introduced to General Fairfax, who paid him and his art some compliments. I hope you enjoy the sounds of a cat playing. Good God. In this year, he was consulted by King Charles I as to a safe place to conceal his real person, but the king, unfortunately for himself, neglected Lilly's advice and was accordingly ruined. If only the king had listened to his astrologer. Again, in 1648, the king consulted Lilly, but though he promised to take the astrologer's advice and come up to London with the commissioners, he did not, however, keep his word, and again lost a good opportunity of escaping from his evil destiny. In this year, says Lilly, for very great considerations, the Council of State gave me in money £50 and a pension of £100 per annum, which for 2 years I received, but no more. Typical. In January 1649, he was present at the trial of King Charles, who spoke, says he, excellently well. In 1651, he published Monarchy or No Monarchy. Wow. Which contained several hieroglyphics, among others those of the Great Plague and the Fire of London, which the reader will find a copy of in his work. No wonder they were suspicious of him, because, oh my god, monarchy or no monarchy? How dare he even utter the concept? These celebrated predictions were made by means of the motions of the fixed stars, as is evident by the words of Lilly, who says, quote, "The asterisms and signs and constellations give highest light thereunto." The bull's north horn, a star which Ptolemy says is like Mars, was in the year 1666, when the fire occurred, in 17 degrees 54 minutes of Gemini, which is the exact ascendant of London. You can calculate nativities of, or natal charts, I suppose, of towns, cities, countries. There might be debate on what actual time or date or year to use for it, but for something like the United States, I believe a lot of astrologers use the Declaration of Independence I could be wrong on that. But usually it's when something is like officially founded and is what it is presently today, or at the time of constructing a chart. Because while there is the geological location of something, there is also the body of sorts, of the entity, of the town, city, country, whatever, just as there is for a person. So that is how London has an ascendant. It was, no doubt, by this means Lilly judged the city would suffer by fire, for in his almanac for 1666 he states that the 19th degree of Gemini is London's horoscope. Our author was not very nice in his calculations, and it may be observed that, though it may be called the 19th degree, being within 6 minutes of it, yet in reality 17 degrees 54 minutes of Gemini is the true ascendant of London. It was that which ascended at the moment of driving the first pile of the new London Bridge. Oh, okay, cool. So it looks like he calculated the birth of London as the moment when they started working on the new London Bridge. Is that what he's saying? Interesting. The longitude of the Bull's North Horn, 1st of January in 1834. Oh, it looks like right here the Zadkiel is taking note of the difference in the calculation of the ascendant. Probably. Yes, because of the way that the precession of the equinox, is that the right phrasing? The way that things shift in space. The stars were in a different position in the 1600s than they were in the 1800s, but only by a couple of degrees. There's so much I could get into about fixed star or sidereal astrology versus tropical astrology, and I'm not going to do it, but that's what that chart is. It gives the year when that evil star was crossing the ascending sign of London. And as it is of the fiery nature of Mars, we need not be surprised that it produced such terrific results. The celebrated Nostradamus, that's the guy I was trying to remember the name of when I was doing the preface of this book. The celebrated Nostradamus had predicted the same event in that year. That's actually interesting, though. That's actually interesting. About 111 years previously, the blood of the just, which has been spilt in London, requires it to be burned with fire in 66, is what he said. He states that he made this prediction by, quote, astronomical affections. In 1651, Lilly was again had before the Parliament on account of his predictions and was 13 days in the custody of the sergeant at arms. But the prediction which gave offense, such that the, quote, Parliament stood upon a tottering foundation, and that the commonalty and soldiery would join together against them, was amply fulfilled by the members being turned out of doors by Oliver Cromwell. In February 1654, his second wife died. There's my cat behind me. Hi. In February 1654, his second wife died, and in October following, he married a third, signified in his nativity by Jupiter in Libra, and, says he, she is so totally in her conditions, to my great comfort. So she was not of the Mars nature, like his second wife. In 1655, he was indicted at Hicks Hall by a half-witted young woman. Oh, God. The cause of the indictment was that he had given judgment upon stolen goods and received 2 shillings and 6 pence, contrary to an act made in King James's time. I owned, says he, the taking of half a crown for my judgment of the theft, but said that I gave no other judgment, but that the goods would not be recovered, being that was all which was required of me. I spoke for myself and introduced my own introduction to court, saying that I had some years before emitted that book for the benefit of this and other nations, that it was allowed by authority and had found good acceptance in both universities, that the study of astrology was lawful and not contradicted by any scripture, that I neither had or ever did use any charms, sorceries, or enchantments related in the bill of indictment. The jury, who went not from the bar, brought in no true bill. In 1666 happened, says our author, that miraculous conflagration in the city of London, whereby in 4 days the most part thereof was consumed by fire. He then gives an account of his being brought before the House of Commons by the following summons. Monday, 22nd of October, 1666. At the committee appointed to inquire after the causes of the late fires, ordered that Mr. Lilly do attend this committee on Friday next, being the 25th of October, 1666, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, in the Speaker's chamber, to answer such questions as shall be then and there asked him. Robert Brooke. In remarking on the circumstance, he says, I conceive there was never more civility used unto any than unto myself. And you know there was no small number of Parliament men appeared when they heard I was to be there. Okay, Lily. Sir Robert Brooke spoke to this purpose. Mr. Lilly, this committee thought fit to summon you to appear before them this day, to know if you can say anything as to the cause of the late fire, or whether there might be any design therein. You are called the rather hither, because in a book of yours long since printed, you hinted some such thing by one of your hieroglyphics. Unto which I replied, May it please your honours, after the beheading of the late king, considering that in the 3 subsequent years the Parliament acted nothing which concerned the settlement of the nation's peace, and seeing the generality of the people dissatisfied, the citizens of London discontented, the soldiery prone to mutiny, I was desirous, according to the best knowledge God had given me, to make enquiry by the art I studied, what might, from that time, happen unto the Parliament and nation in general. Look, I'm not saying that I might have inspired the people to start a fire to express their discontent, but I was just sharing what the stars were telling me. At last, having satisfied myself as well as I could, and perfected my judgment therein, I thought it most convenient to signify my intentions and conceptions thereof in forms, shapes, types, hieroglyphics, etc., without any commentary, that so my judgment might be concealed from the vulgar, and made manifest only unto the wise. I herein imitating the examples of many wise philosophers who had done the like. Having found, sir, that the city of London should be sadly afflicted with a great plague, not long after with an exorbitant fire, I framed these 2 hieroglyphics, as represented in the book, which, in effect, have proved very true. Was I wrong? Did you foresee the year? Said one. I did not, said I, or was desirous of that I made no scrutiny. I proceeded, "Now, sir, whether there was any design of burning the city or any employed to that purpose, I must deal ingenuously with you. That since the fire, I have taken much pains in the search thereof, but cannot or could not give myself any the least satisfaction therein. I conclude that it was the finger of God only. But what instruments he used thereunto, I am ignorant." The committee seemed well pleased with what I spoke, and dismissed me with great civility. Yeah, checks out. After this, nothing very remarkable happened to our author. He left London, having acquired an independence, and settled at Hersham in the year of the Great Plague, 1665. He then applied himself diligently to the study of physic, and on the 11th October 1670 he received a license to practice as a physician. He continued to practice with much success, no doubt by applying his astrological science thereto, and he gave his advice and prescriptions freely, without money. Good. That's nice. He is probably pretty rich by now. It does sound that way. His skill and his charity gained him extraordinary credit and estimation. He continued generally in good health till August 1674, but his health and his eyesight remained very weak afterwards. He still continued to write his monthly observations and astrological judgments, though latterly, by the aid of an amanuensis, though latterly by the aid of somebody else, Mr. Henry Colley, who succeeded him as an astrologer, even until the year 1682. In the beginning of 1681, he was seized with a flux, which he recovered from, but then became totally blind. The 30th of May of that year, he was seized with a dead palsy, and after some days of severe suffering, he died about 3 o'clock on the morning of the 9th of June, 1681, without any shew of trouble or pangs. He was buried in the chancel of Walton Church, his friend Sir Elias Ashmole assisting at the laying him in his grave, which was on the left side of the communion table. A black marble stone was afterwards placed thereon by his friend with the following inscription. I will not try to read that because that is Latin, and I do not know Latin. An epistle to the student of astrology. I'm guessing this was written by Lilly himself. My friend, whoever thou art, that with so much ease shalt receive the benefit of my hard studies, and doest intend to proceed in this heavenly knowledge of the stars, in the first place consider and admire thy Creator. Be thankful unto him, and be humble, and let no natural knowledge, how profound or transcendent soever it be, elate thy mind to neglect that divine providence, by whose all-seeing order and appointment all things, heavenly and earthly, have their constant motion. The more thy knowledge is enlarged, the more do thou to magnify the power and wisdom of Almighty God, to strive to preserve thyself in his favor. For the more holy thou art, the more near to God the pure judgment thou shalt give. Beware of pride and self-conceit. Remember how that long ago no irrational creature durst offend man, the macrocosm, but did faithfully serve and obey him, so long as he was master of his own reason and passions, or until he subjected his will unto the unreasonable part. But alas, when iniquity abounded, and man gave the reins to his own affection and deserted reason, then every beast, creature, and outward harmful thing became rebellious to his command. Stand fast, O man, to thy God, then consider thy own nobleness, how all created things, both present and to come, were for thy sake created. Nay, for thy sake God became man. Thou art that creature who, being conversant with Christ, livest and reignest above the heavens, and sits above all power and authority. How many preeminences, privileges, advantages hath God bestowed upon thee? Thou rangest above the heavens by contemplation, conceivest the motion and magnitude of the stars. Thou talkest with angels, yea, with God himself. Thou hast all creatures within thy dominion, and keepest the devils, and keepest the devils in subjection. Do not, then, or shame to face thy nature, or make thyself unworthy of such gifts, or deprive thyself of that great power, glory, and blessedness God hath allotted thee, by casting from thee his favor for possession of a few imperfect pleasures. Use this power for good, not evil. Having considered thy God and what thyself art, during thy being God's servant, now receive instruction in how thy practice I would have thee carry thyself. As thou daily conversest with the heavens, to instruct and form thy mind, according to the image of divinity, learn all the ornaments of virtue. Be sufficiently instructed therein. Be humane, courteous, familiar to all, easy of access. Afflict not the miserable with terror of a harsh judgment. Direct such to call on God, to divert his judgments impending over them. Be civil, sober, covet not an estate. Give freely to the poor, both money and judgment. Let no worldly wealth procure an erroneous judgment from thee, or such as may dishonor the art. So I guess he's saying that he did not let any political influences affect his predictions, but who knows. Be sparing in delivering judgment against the commonwealth thou livest in. He learned from his reckless prediction of the Great Fire. And avoid law and controversy. In thy study be totus on illis, that thou mayest be singulus in art. Be not extravagant or desirous to learn every science. Be not aliquid in omnibus. Be faithful, tenacious, betray no one's secrets. Instruct all men to live well. Be a good example thyself. Love thy own native country. Be not dismayed if ill spoken of. Conscientia mille testis. God suffers no sin unpunished, no lie unrevenged. Pray for the nobility, honor the gentry, and yeomanry of England. Stand firm to the commands of this Parliament. Have a reverent opinion of our worthy lawyers, for without their learned pains and the mutual assistance of some true-spirited gentlemen, we might yet be made slaves, but we will not. We now see light as well as many of the clergy. Pray, if it stand with God's will, that monarchy in this kingdom may continue, his majesty and posterity reign. Forget not the Scottish nation, their mutual assistance in our necessity, their honourable departure. God preserve the illustrious Fairfax and his whole army, and let the famous city of London be ever blessed, and all her worthy citizens. The Zadkiel added, I have retained the exact orthography of this epistle, which is a curious and interesting remnant of our author's day. It was penned in 1647, I think, AD. And that is the life of William Lilly. If you have drifted off to sleep, I wish you pleasant dreams. And if you are still with me here now, maybe I have some other videos up to help lull you to a state of relaxation, or whatever it may be, whatever you're looking for, a state of peace, slumber, or just chilling out, or maybe even learning something, who knows. In my next video, I will begin to cover the first chapter, maybe the first 2 chapters chapters. They're quite short. The first chapter or two of the work. Thank you for joining me. If you are still here right now, please like and subscribe, and I will see you later. Bye.